Millionaire catches Housemaid dancing with his son in a wheelchair. What he did next shocked everyone. David Harris pushed open the door and froze in place. His hand still gripped the house keys, but his eyes were locked onto the scene unfolding before him. What he was seeing was impossible. His son, Liam, the boy who had lived in silence for 2 years since the car crash that took David's beloved wife, was laughing. Not a forced laugh, not a polite smile, but a real, radiant laugh, bubbling out in soft giggles. The kind of laugh David had forgotten even existed on his son's face. In the living room, a young woman, light brown hair, simple blouse and jeans, was gently pushing Liam's wheelchair in circles, making animal noises and silly faces as she moved. "And here comes the brave little lion in his special off-road car," she called out in a storyteller's voice. "Roar! He's going to rescue all the animals in the jungle." Liam clapped, soft, feeble claps, but deliberate. His eyes sparkled with a light David thought had long died out. The boy moved his mouth, trying to mimic her sounds, forming little indecipherable noises. Tears welled up unexpectedly in David's eyes. 2 thick drops rolled down his face. It was a miracle, something impossible, but it was happening. David was so overwhelmed that he dropped his keychain. The sound echoed through the room. The miracle shattered instantly. Liam stopped laughing, shrank back into his wheelchair, and returned to the indifferent expression David knew all too well. But for a brief, fragile moment, David had seen his son again, and that glimpse would haunt him in the most beautiful way. It was as if someone had just turned off a light. "Who are you? What are you doing with my son?" David's voice trembled, caught between emotion and panic. The young woman stood up quickly, smoothing her uniform. "Good afternoon. I'm Sophie. Sophie Allen. I was assigned to work here today. Didn't the agency inform you?" David glanced at Liam, who was now staring intently at his own hands. The change had happened too fast, from a joyful child to a broken one, in just 2 seconds. "This feels awkward. Would you prefer I come back another time? I really don't want to intrude." There was something very different about the way Sophie treated Liam. She didn't look at him with pity. She didn't treat him like a fragile or tragic case. She saw him as a regular child. "You can stay," David said quietly. "Just be careful. Liam's very fragile." Sophie nodded softly. "I'll be careful, but if he wants to laugh, I don't think I'll be able to stop that." Her response made David pause. He realized Sophie wasn't like the others. She wasn't trying to fix Liam with techniques. She was reaching him with her heart. That evening, David stayed late in his studio, but faint giggles from the living room drew him to the hallway. Peeking through the crack of the door, he saw Sophie sitting cross-legged on the floor, making a puppet out of an old sock. Liam sat in his wheelchair, leaning toward her, eyes lit with curiosity. "That flower in the yard," Sophie said in a high-pitched voice, "has been complaining all day about the sun?" Liam giggled, soft but real. David couldn't remember the last time his son had shown such expression, and in that moment, something inside his frozen heart began to thaw. Just a little. The next morning, David watched secretly from his office window. Sophie was gardening while Liam sat on the porch, quietly observing her. She wasn't just tidying up, she was telling a story. "You know what? This morning, the flowers told me a secret. That rose over there, she's a little dramatic, always complaining about the sun." She changed her voice. "Oh, it's too hot. Oh, I'm so thirsty." Then she mimicked the daisy, shy and whispering like this. Sophie shifted her tone from high to low, her facial expressions changing with each character. Liam watched intently. It was the first time in 2 years that he showed genuine interest in anything. David's heart ached. When was the last time he tried to make his son laugh? When had he given up trying? because each time Liam didn't respond, the pain cut deeper. A memory flooded in. Emily pushing Liam on the swing, both of them laughing, shouting, "Higher, Mommy, higher!" It was a Saturday morning, the last one before everything ended. David closed his eyes. If only he hadn't insisted Emily go to the supermarket with him. If only he'd driven slower in the rain. A sound snapped him out of his thoughts. Liam was clapping again, stronger this time. Applause for Sophie's performance. It was the first voluntary movement Liam had made in months. "Mr. Harris," Sophie's voice startled him. She had made her way up to the porch without him noticing. "Sorry to bother you," she said gently. "I just wanted to ask, would it be all right if I made a small snack for Liam? He barely ate anything this morning." David looked at his son. It was true. Liam only ate enough to survive, never with interest. "You can try," David replied, "but he's very picky." "I could make little animal-shaped sandwiches," Sophie offered. Sometimes, if it looks fun, kids are more willing to eat. David wanted to say, nothing worked with Liam. He'd tried everything. But there was a glimmer of hope in Sophie's eyes, and he couldn't bring himself to crush it. "Go ahead," he said quietly. An hour later, Sophie returned with a tray of food. Sandwich slices shaped like butterflies, with cherry tomatoes as antennae and lettuce wings. "Look," she said, "some little butterflies came to have lunch with you. They're starving. For love." Liam stared at the tray, hesitated for a moment, then picked up a butterfly and took a small bite. David nearly gasped out loud. Liam ate because he wanted to. "Well done, champ," Sophie smiled. "The butterflies said you're the kindest boy they've ever met." As she left, Sophie crouched to Liam's eye level. "Let's play again tomorrow, okay, my prince?" Liam gave a small nod. Slight, but unmistakably a nod. For the first time in 2 years, David felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Real hope. 3 days later, Sophie and Liam's special ritual had become a daily routine. She turned every household chore into an adventure. In the mornings, she pushed his wheelchair around the house while narrating thrilling stories. The vase in the living room became a castle, the chandelier a spaceship, and the staircase the mountain of gentle dragons. Liam reacted more and more each day. He pointed to objects he wanted Sophie to talk about. His lips moved as if he was trying to say something. His eyes were lighting up again. During one playful afternoon, Sophie turned on children's music and began dancing around Liam's wheelchair. "Come on, my prince, let's dance. You wave your hands, I'll shake my feet." Liam raised his hands and swayed to the rhythm. Not much, but it was participation. It was life returning. David watched secretly from the door. He wanted to step in, to join them, but he was afraid he might break the magic, afraid that his presence would push Liam back into silence. Then, during snack time, the impossible happened. Sophie was narrating an adventure where she and Liam were brave explorers. "And now, explorer Liam, we must cross the river full of hungry crocodiles. Do you have the courage?" Liam looked at her intently. His lips moved. David leaned in, his heart pounding. Then, like a whisper carried by the wind, Liam softly said, "Ma, Ma." David froze. Liam was trying to say, "Mama." No, he wasn't thinking of Emily. He was looking at Sophie. "Mama." Sophie was moved, but she didn't make a big deal of it. She simply smiled gently. "That's right, my little prince. But even more magical than any miracle is you." That day, when Sophie left, her steps were different. Her eyes held hope, determination. She had done it. She had truly gotten through to Liam. But neither David nor Sophie knew. Someone else had been watching from the second-floor window. A shadow had been observing every gesture, every small breakthrough, and that shadow was not pleased with what it saw. 1 week later, on Sophie's Saturday shift, everything changed. She was pushing Liam's wheelchair down the hallway, singing as she walked, when the doorbell rang. David went to answer it, and she heard hushed voices outside, then footsteps approaching. "Liam, someone very special is here to see you." David's voice sounded strange, tinged with emotion and disbelief. When the woman entered the room, Sophie felt as if the world had stopped. It couldn't be. This couldn't be real. The woman looked exactly like the photos of Emily that hung throughout the house. Same height, same blonde hair, same blue eyes, even the same style of clothing. It was as if David's late wife had come back to life. The effect on Liam was instant and intense. The boy let out a choked, terrified scream and began trembling violently in his wheelchair. His eyes filled with tears as he stared at the ghost in front of him. "Hello, sweetheart. Aunt Victoria is home," the woman said, her voice eerily similar to Emily's. Victoria stepped forward and kissed Liam's forehead, but he kept shaking in fear. David was clearly overwhelmed as well. His hands trembled as he introduced them. "Sophie, this is Victoria, Emily's twin sister. Victoria, this is Sophie, our caregiver." Victoria extended her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. There was something cold behind it. "Lovely to meet you, Sophie. I hope you've been taking good care of our family." "Our family?" The way she said it made Sophie uneasy. It sounded like a claim of possession. "I'm doing my best, of course," Sophie replied politely. "David tells me you've been quite indulgent with little Liam." The way she said it made Sophie feel as though her care for Liam was somehow inappropriate. David quickly interjected, "Victoria just returned from Europe after taking time to recover from Emily's passing. She's here now to stay with us, to help take care of Liam." "That's wonderful. He does need family close by." Sophie tried to sound sincere, but something didn't sit right. If Victoria had just overcome grief, why did she seem so composed, so calculating? "Family knows family best, right, David?" Victoria said, her eyes locking onto him with a look Sophie couldn't decipher. Something hidden, something from the past. "Liam, sweetheart, aren't you going to give your aunt a hug?" Victoria leaned forward, but Liam recoiled and let out a desperate cry. "He's still very sensitive," David said quickly. "The accident caused deep psychological trauma." "Of course, I understand, but I'm the only one who resembles Emily. If anyone can reach him, it's me." Sophie looked at Liam and felt a chill. All the progress of the past week, gone. The boy had retreated completely, worse than before, now gripped by fear. Victoria noticed Sophie's worried gaze and offered a chilling smile. "You're wondering about the resemblance, aren't you? Emily and I were identical twins. People say our personalities were the same too." But Sophie could see it clearly. Victoria's eyes were not like Emily's. Emily's photos radiated warmth. Victoria radiated coldness. David was visibly emotional, looking at Victoria. For him, it must have felt like seeing Emily alive again. "It's so good to have you here, Victoria. Liam needs a maternal figure, and you're the closest to Emily." "Exactly. And now that I'm here, I can personally care for him. I'm sure Sophie understands that as family, I have priority in all decisions concerning Liam." It was a veiled warning. Victoria was asserting her dominance. "Of course," Sophie said, but her voice had a firmness to it. When David stepped out to bring in Victoria's luggage, she moved closer to Sophie. The smile vanished completely. "Let's be clear," she whispered, just loud enough for Sophie to hear. "I hope you understand your place in this house. You're the help. I'm family. Never forget that." Her tone was laced with threat. When David returned, Victoria's sweet smile returned as if it had never left. That night, Liam didn't eat, didn't speak, didn't move. Sophie tried stories, silly voices, but he just stared blankly at the old photo of his mother. From the moment Victoria stepped into that house, Liam seemed to be pulled back to square one. He stopped clapping, stopped pointing, stopped smiling. Whenever Sophie tried to tell a story, Liam would drop his gaze and shrink into himself. But what worried Sophie the most was the way he looked whenever Victoria was nearby. Pure fear, like a small animal cornered. Sophie brought it up to David, gently, without blame. "He's changed completely since she came. I don't know what's happening, but Liam is terrified." David sighed. He'd noticed it too, but at the same time, he saw that Victoria was trying. She made breakfast, helped tidy up, asked about Emily. Maybe she just wanted to reconnect. "Maybe Liam's in shock," David said. "She looks so much like his mom. Maybe he just needs time." But time didn't heal anything. If anything, it made things worse. One afternoon, Sophie heard whispers behind Liam's bedroom door. She paused, didn't enter. It was Victoria's voice, low and cold. "You know, your mom was worried that day because you were crying in the car. She turned to calm you. And then the accident happened." Liam let out a soft, aching moan. "If you get upset like that again, make too much noise. Your dad might get into trouble too. You don't want that, do you?" Sophie felt her blood run cold. Victoria was manipulating an 8-year-old child, making him believe he caused his mother's death, making him believe his father might be next. Sophie held her breath. She couldn't burst in, not without proof. No one would believe her. And if Victoria suspected she was being watched, she'd only hide deeper in the shadows. The next day, Liam didn't eat. When Sophie came near, he shook his head, eyes vacant. He didn't dare speak, didn't dare move, terrified that any sound might cause disaster. That night, David sat beside his son. "Why are you crying so much, buddy? You can tell me." But Liam just curled under the blanket, whispering, Can't talk. Daddy will get hurt." David froze. "No, son, I'm fine. You can tell me anything." But Liam shook his head, desperate. He was trapped in fear, crafted by someone he should have been able to trust. Meanwhile, Victoria began planting seeds of doubt in David. "Don't you think it's strange?" she whispered one evening. "Liam's gotten worse since Sophie showed up. Before, at least he was stable. Now he's seeing things that aren't there." David hesitated. A part of him knew that wasn't true, but exhaustion, grief, and guilt clouded his judgment. Maybe you're right," he murmured. And within just a few short days, Victoria was suffocating Liam and isolating Sophie, and no one even realized it. In the days that followed, Sophie kept her distance, but watched everything more closely. She couldn't protect Liam directly, but she could figure out what was really going on. The answer came by accident. While cleaning the living room, Sophie noticed a few bank papers left on the table. David's name was on them, documents for a heritage transfer. The amount, nearly $50 million. She frowned. David had never mentioned any inheritance. The date on the document was from 2 months ago, exactly when Victoria had returned from Europe. Too convenient. The next day, while helping Victoria pick up her purse after it fell, Sophie noticed an electric bill. The address was a local apartment, dated 3 months ago. Her heart skipped a beat. If Victoria had truly been living in Europe for the past 2 years, why did she have utility bills from right here in town? And why did everything about her seem off? From that moment on, Sophie began noticing more. Victoria knew the name of the new pizza delivery guy, someone who'd only worked in the area for a few months. She knew the corner pharmacy had changed owners. She knew David had switched coffee brands, something even Sophie hadn't noticed. Victoria hadn't returned from Europe. She had never left this place. But why lie? That night, Liam, shaking, hiding behind the living room couch, handed Sophie a folded note. It was a child's crude drawing, Two identical women in a car. One had her hands on the wheel. The other was pulling it. In the back seat, a small boy was crying. Sophie felt her chest tighten. Liam remembered the crash. And in that memory, there were two identical women, Emily and Victoria. Sophie's voice trembled. "Liam, you saw this? When your mom got hurt?" Liam nodded. Tears welled in his eyes. He pointed to the woman pulling the wheel, then scrawled 3 shaky words. She was there. Just then, Sophie heard footsteps behind her. Victoria stood at the doorway, arms crossed, her gaze as cold as steel. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice soft but sharp as a blade. Sophie hid the paper behind her. "Just cleaning up." Victoria stepped forward, her smile gone. "You always show up at the right place, right time, don't you, Sophie?" That night, when Sophie returned home, the front door was slightly ajar. Her heart pounded. She was certain she had locked it before leaving. She stepped inside cautiously. Nothing was missing, but muddy footprints stained the floor. Someone had been inside. She walked into the bathroom and froze. Scrawled on the mirror in red lipstick were the words, "You have a lovely family. It would be a shame if something happened to them." For the next week, Sophie couldn't shake the warning from her mind. Someone had broken into her home, knew where she lived, and knew everything about her family. But she couldn't back down. Liam was suffering, and she was the only one who could see the truth. In the days that followed, Victoria began increasing the pressure from every direction. With David, she continued to sow seeds of doubt. "Can't you see, David? Liam clings to that caregiver far too much. That's not healthy. A traumatized child becoming emotionally dependent on an outsider? That's dangerous." With Liam, she escalated her emotional manipulation. "Did you show Sophie those drawings? If you did, do you know what could happen? She might get into big trouble. Your dad would be very upset too. Is that what you want?" And with Sophie, Victoria no longer hid her threats. She made them openly. "Your family seems lovely. Your mother, your younger brother, very precious." Sophie froze. How did Victoria know about her family? "Your mother still lives in that little blue house, right? And your brother, João, isn't it? Still working at that gas station by the highway?" Sophie's heart pounded. She had never told anyone about them. "Are you threatening me?" "Just expressing concern. The same way you seem concerned about certain things." Sophie understood the message loud and clear. If she kept investigating, her loved ones would be in danger. That night, she called home, shaken. "Mom, is everything okay over there?" "We're fine, dear." "Why? What's going on?" "If any stranger comes to the door, don't open it. Please be careful." "You're worrying me now, Sophie. What's happening?" "Nothing. Just being cautious, that's all." But Sophie knew caution wasn't enough. Victoria had proven she was capable of anything. Sophie began to feel she was being followed. No matter where she went, Victoria always seemed to appear. "Oh, fancy meeting you at the bakery?" "Wow, what a coincidence. We're both at the market today?" Too many coincidences. Sophie was being watched. During one such encounter, Victoria issued a clear warning. "Sophie, you know, some people ask too many questions, and sometimes that leads to very big problems." "What do you mean?" "Just saying, being too curious about the past can lead to some unfortunate consequences." Victoria never said it directly, but the threat was unmistakable. She knew Sophie had seen too much. "You understand what I'm saying, don't you?" Sophie only nodded slightly, pretending not to understand, but inside, she was trembling. By the end of week 6, Victoria knew it was time to act. Liam still tried to communicate with Sophie through his drawings. David had started to question some of Victoria's claims. And Sophie, she knew too much. It was time to end it. That afternoon, David left the house to handle some inheritance paperwork. Liam was napping in the living room. The house was quiet. Victoria approached Sophie. "Sophie, you've seemed tense lately. Would you like a cup of tea to help you relax?" Sophie was cautious but kept her tone neutral. "Thank you, Victoria." Victoria went to the kitchen, crushed one of her strongest sleeping pills, and stirred it into the hot tea. "I always use this tea when I'm anxious. It helps me sleep like a baby." Sophie took the cup. After the first sip, she noticed something off. "There's a strange taste." "I added a bit of honey," Victoria said with a smile. Sophie pretended to keep sipping, but when Victoria turned away, she poured the tea into the nearby plant. "Sophie, I've been thinking a lot about our situation." "What situation?" "You observe too much, ask too many questions. You know, sometimes people stumble onto things they shouldn't." Her voice turned noticeably colder. Sophie faked a yawn and leaned back in her chair, acting drowsy. "I don't understand." "Oh, you understand perfectly," Victoria said, as she stepped closer, thinking the drug was working. "Some people just don't know when to stop. They don't know their place, and for that, there are consequences." She leaned down and whispered into Sophie's ear. "Your family is so sweet. It would be a shame if something happened, just because of your curiosity." Sophie kept pretending to fade, though she was fully alert. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, for you to disappear from David's life, from Liam's life." Victoria paced the room like rehearsing a play. "Here's how the story will go. You couldn't handle the pressure. You broke down. The guilt over failing Liam was too much. You couldn't take it anymore." That's when Sophie realized Victoria was planning to stage a suicide. "Why are you doing this?" Victoria stopped. Her eyes burned with fury. "Because David was supposed to be mine. I loved him first. It was Emily who stole him from me." Her voice was thick with bitterness. "She's gone now, finally, and I won't let a housemaid ruin everything." Sophie remained limp, but her mind was racing. "David will be sad, at first, but I'll be there for him. Comfort him. And Liam, he'll forget. He's just a child." And in that moment, Sophie knew if Victoria succeeded, Liam would grow up trapped in the hands of a dangerous woman. Still pretending to be drowsy, she understood. She had to get out, not just to save herself, but to save Liam too. Sophie continued to fake drowsiness. Victoria left the room to fetch something else, believing the drug had taken effect. Just then, soft footsteps echoed in the hallway. Liam had woken up. He appeared in the doorway, still sleepy. When he saw Sophie, he gave a small smile. But at that exact moment, Victoria returned, a rope in her hand. When she saw Sophie still standing, her expression changed instantly. Her voice turned sharp and ice-cold. No more sweet pretense. "Oh, looks like my tea didn't work as planned." Liam sensed something was terribly wrong. He looked at Sophie, then at Victoria, his eyes filled with worry. "How wonderful that you're awake, Liam. Now you'll get to say goodbye to your dear friend." Victoria stood in front of the door, blocking the way. Sophie tried to move, but there was no escape. And then, a miracle happened. Liam, seeing the person he loved in danger, felt something erupt inside him, a surge of strength. He had to protect Sophie. "No!" The word rang out like thunder from Liam's own mouth. It was the first clear word he had spoken in 2 years. Victoria froze. The rope dropped from her hand. "Don't hurt her!" Liam shouted again, each word broken but fierce. He struggled to form the next sentence, his voice raspy. Bad. She's bad." Liam pointed directly at Victoria with his trembling finger. Dad! Dad!" Just then, David entered, having returned home. Hearing Liam's voice, he rushed in. What he saw made his chest tighten. Sophie cornered in the room, Victoria standing before her, a rope on the floor, and Liam, trembling, shouting. "What is going on?" David shouted. "Dad," Liam cried, sobbing. "She wanted to hurt Miss Sophie." David stared in shock. "Victoria, what is this?" "David, don't listen to him. He's hallucinating," Victoria snapped. But Liam didn't stop. Word by word, he pushed through. "She was in car with Mom. They fought. She pulled steering wheel." David went still. "She pulled the wheel? I saw everything. She pulled the wheel. Mom died because of her." The air grew heavy. Each word from Liam was a dagger to David's heart. He turned to Victoria, voice low and firm. "Victoria, tell me this isn't true." Victoria panicked, stumbling over her words. "David, I didn't mean to. It's just, Amanda found out I still loved you. She threatened to expose everything. I just wanted her to stop." "So you killed my wife?" David's voice was no longer asking, it was stating. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to scare her." "Then, everything happened so fast. And you let me and my son live in guilt for 2 years. Let him believe it was his fault his mother died." "No, it wasn't me. It was her. She argued." "Enough," Liam shouted again. "Mom fell because of you." David pulled out his phone and dialed. "Hello, I need to report a crime. We have a confession to a homicide." The police arrived just 15 minutes later. David had already explained everything over the phone. When the officers entered, they found Victoria collapsed on the floor in tears. David wrapped his arms around Liam, holding him tightly. Sophie stood frozen, still catching her breath. But something had changed forever. Liam had found his voice, the truth had come to light, and the shadows that haunted their home were finally breaking. As the officers took her away, David knelt and wrapped his arms around his son. "It's not your fault, son. It was never your fault." Liam sobbed. I tried to tell." David gripped his hand. "And you did. You were braver than anyone." Sophie silently wiped her tears. In that moment, David looked at her, then at Liam, and he knew this woman had saved his son's life. In the days following Victoria's arrest, the house began to breathe again, but not with the dead silence from before. This was a new kind of quiet, fragile but real. Liam no longer cried at night. He started eating again, slowly but willingly. He slept through the night, and most importantly, he spoke more with each passing day. His first words in the morning, "I want orange juice." At lunch, "Will Sophie tell a story today?" David often stood in the doorway, watching his son, his heart stitching itself back together, one thread at a time. One warm afternoon, David walked into the living room, where Liam and Sophie were building a pillow fort. The boy spotted his father, smiled, and waved. A simple gesture. But to David, it was a miracle. After dinner that evening, David stood at the doorway, watching Sophie as she cleaned the dishes. "Sophie?" She turned, offering her usual smile, though there was something cautious in her eyes. Since the incident with Victoria, the two hadn't really spoken alone. I wanted to thank you," David said slowly, "for not giving up, for believing in Liam, even when I didn't." Sophie shook her head gently. "I couldn't leave, not when he needed me." "And I'm sorry," David said, voice sincere, "for doubting you, for leaving you alone when things got dark." "You didn't know," Sophie replied softly. "No one did. But Liam's okay now. That's what matters." David nodded, his gaze shifting to his son, lying in a nest of pillows, giggling. "You didn't just save my son," he said quietly. "You saved me too." A silence settled between them. No more words needed. Just two people standing in a kitchen, inside a home that was finally beginning to breathe again. A year had passed. The house that once echoed with silence and sorrow now rang with children's laughter, whispered bedtime stories, and soft music from the old kitchen radio. Liam now spoke fluently, playfully like any other child. He still used a wheelchair, but that didn't stop him from smiling every single day. And David, the man who once shattered, had learned to smile again. Not because the pain was gone, but because new love had filled the spaces with gentleness and truth. That afternoon, bathed in golden sunset light in the garden, David knelt before Sophie, holding her hand. "Sophie, you gave me back my life and gave Liam his smile. Will you marry me?" Sophie paused, eyes glistening. Liam, sitting in his wheelchair beside them, shouted, "Say yes! I need a new mom!" Laughter broke through the emotion. Sophie nodded. "I will." And the three of them embraced in the garden, a family not by blood, but by love. The next day, they visited the cemetery. It was Liam's second time seeing his mother's grave since the accident. David pushed the chair while Sophie walked beside them. Liam placed a single white flower on the headstone. "Hi, Mom," Liam said calmly. "I'm okay now. I'm not scared anymore." He looked at Sophie, taking her hand. "Sophie's going to marry Dad. She's really nice. You'd like her?" David lowered his head. "Thank you, Emily, for letting Sophie find her way to us. I promise to care for our son with everything you once taught me." They stood there a while in silence. No tears, just warm sun, soft breeze, and true peace. That night, Liam lay in the garden, watching the stars. Sophie and David sat beside him. "Dad, will Mom be sad that I have a new mom now?" David squeezed his hand. "She'd only be sad if you weren't happy." Liam smiled and looked up at the sky. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for sending Sophie to us." And as the stars blinked above them, David knew this time the light would stay. The wind stirred, soft as a hug from heaven. And so they began a new chapter, not perfect, but filled with love, truth, and hope.